Last time on RobotnikHolmes reads, the Chaotix investigate the end of the world. And now, here it is, I guess. I don't think my videos have been this poorly timed since the one about the fast food outbreak. A good day all, RobotnikHolmes here. Things sure have been interesting as of late in the world of IDW Sonic. We've seen the Blue Boy regroup with friends, confront badniks and bad guys and the like. Hell, even save Angel Island from a returning Neo-Metal Sonic. Definitely one of the early standout moments, my brain needed that. But since the Battle for Angel Island story ended, and Sonic's friends went back to their day jobs and whatnot, things have been slowly creeping down from the horizon, dripping specks of moodiness and overwhelming dread into the Sonic property that, while dire as all heck, brings out many aspects of the characters like we'd never even expect in our wildest dreams. I am, of course, referring to IDW Sonic's second official saga, the one that ran for a year and a half, the Metal Virus arc, which promised a boatload of chaos even in its introductory issues. Looking back, this downer zombie flick of a saga paved the way for some really impressive character moments, for cast members new and old, as well as adding levity to their personalities at times, but, you know, it sure was a trip seeing the narrative get awfuler yet awfuler with every issue. By the end, the depressing premise and dwindling cast had worn the readership down, myself included. My opinion's far from universal. I'm sure that the comic moving on to newer stuff has made this arc much more digestible now. But not for me. Not for those who sat there, waiting from its inception to its grand finale for things to finally be cheerful and upbringing again. To a day when I can finally smile while reading a Sonic comic book. I hope I didn't make it out to be totally horrible. My thoughts on this inherently sorrowful saga are overall in the mid-tier. Because, as bad as it can get, the characters are finally given a more grand situation to handle, one on a worldwide scale that shows just how tough the cast can be when the going gets really, really tough. They say the fighter in you emerges when great danger is afoot, and holy cheese does that stand to reason once we get to Crisis City. And I don't mean that Crisis City, this one is a joyride compared to that Sonic 06 stage. Like I mentioned before, as depressing as it can get with all the zombots and character deaths, I won't make these reviews equally heartrending. There are places to indulge in gritty drama, but not here. This is a safe space. Anyhow, buckle up ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between. In this video, we are looking at issues 17 to 20 of Sonic the Hedgehog by IDW Publishing. Yeah, from here on out, I wouldn't be too startled by the covers during this arc. A lot of them give off horror movie vibes, though it doesn't take away from how well they are drawn and coloured. The limited palette on this one is very nice, and big props to Lawrence. The variant covers, drawn by Peppers and Fordrain, do more in showing who the main focus will be on. Yep, it's the Doof Squad. Look at the detective noir aesthetic on that one. Yeah, I love these guys. Let's put them through hell! Issue number 17, Plague. Yeah, see, I told you things would be grim, right down to the titles. Never mind that Flecky causing an outbreak with the transmittable metal virus in the stinger of the previous issue. Dr. Eggman and his dreaded spaceship have arrived at Seaside City to wreak havoc. But the Chaotix Detective Agency are currently occupied by Tails, updating them on what went about in the previous issues. The amnesia, the Eggman, the everything and all that. Though their next client could come in at any second. Sorry, Vector, that's no client. That's the plot. Man, these guys may not be super fast hedgehogs, or fox tech wizards, or a cat, but they sure as hell are heroes through and through. After escaping a zombot ambush and seeing the carnage that the former amnesiac doctor is causing to their hometown, they do their best to save everybody non-lethally. Using flashy ninja ropes, encasing a recently infected woman in a prison of cars. Gravity must really be on your side, Vector, my man. Keeping the indestructible forces away with melee weapons, and trying to fight them head on. Scratch that last one. Don't touch them, Charmy. For the rest of the issue, the Chaotix do their best to get civilians to the docks, the Restoration orders a rescue shuttle to collect the survivors, and Sonic, as temporarily cured as ever, speeds on in at the last second to save Vector from a shiny fate. Poor lad can't exactly help being in this state and is clearly straining from having to run around just so he isn't a hazard to any of his friends. Eggman is definitely going to pay for this. Pretty soon, the rescue shuttle arrives, drawing attention from not only the refugees, but also the horde of zombots roaming about. Doing a head count, Charmy Bee gets upset that there weren't any more survivors, and then suddenly recalls the one Vector had imprisoned earlier. None of the guys are able to stop him, and he returns to the woman with the intent on bringing her on board, only to see that she has fully succumbed to the metallic infection. He expresses shock, and this seals his fate. Holy crap, the first game character casualty. The issue ends once Sonic hears of Charmy's reckless actions and goes back into the fray to look for the bee. Espio and especially Vector mourn over the loss of their fellow detective as the shuttle makes a hasty retreat. Ah, the gut punching begins. Good thing I got this plot armor on. Well, this story turns depressing, and we've only just started. The overall tone is appropriately frantic and chaotic, with our heroes not only having the strength and motive to rescue the survivors, and not put any thought into debates about morality and the outcome of the infected. Me? I enjoy seeing the good guys rescuing peeps left and right despite the stressful situation the story throws them in. Sure, beating badniks is traditional, but showing us just how brave and selfless the cars can be in the face of danger is just as appealing to me in a Sonic book. I could be biased though, that was a thing I liked in Archie Sonic too. Character-wise, the Chaotix are oftentimes used for comic relief, including in this issue, but I like that their goofy selves here are the first group to tackle the worldwide threat. Each of them get to show off their individual skills and how they deal with zombots non-lethally, showing off their awesomeness and just why they're such a cool trio. Except for maybe Charmy Bee and his childish plot device, innocence. I feel him being the first of the main cast to fully turn is a way to show that the writers ain't holding back. Even the innocent, quirky ones are not above being turned. While I'm bothered that Charmy's ignorant nature was a prerequisite for the plot to happen, it's admittedly not out of character for the kid. He could be a real bugger in the games too.
Get back here, you idiot!
But on the opposite end of the characterization, I'm really enjoying the story putting Sonic through the ringer, making the Hedgehog lose his usual cool, free-spirited attitude in favour of him having to stress about the ground he steps on, and properly appreciate his friends that he can currently no longer even touch. It's the perfect test for the Blue Blur. How far can our hero go without succumbing to becoming a zombot? To change the subject, I'd like to mention the art and some of its good and peculiar points. Tracy Yardley drew up this issue, and the Archie Sonic veteran is, as expected, really good at depicting the heroes in dire consequences without making them lose their cool. He's always one to illustrate such captivating panels, and he gives the action the gritty detail the story requires. It's all good stuff, no complaints here, and the use of colour in some panels to emphasise the tension work wonders. Though, compared to other issues in the Metal Virus saga, except for maybe the next one, there are a couple of oddities that stand out, such as how the zombots are depicted. Story-wise, of course, they are virtually the same, but some noticeable details are when Lawrence draws them, zombots are very zombie-like. They lumber around, they have half-closed eyes with hollow black irises, and look generally unnerving with agape mouths. In comparison, under Yardley's pen, it's a more ferocious, sharp-clawed affair, with fangs, snarls, and wide-open eyes with small red dots as pupils. I'm uncertain if this was the artist's decision, or if he just didn't get a proper reference for the zombots and only drew from their basic outline. I'm willing to bet it was the former. The other interesting but not nearly as important detail is how the face ship is depicted in this issue. It's shown to be upright with the evil Eggman face smiling brightly, but still dropping Metal Virus gunk. It could be to make these pages of Sonic glaring at it all the more intense, but perhaps the ship can just rotate and have everything still be functional? On that thought, both are true actually. All in all, I'd say issue number 17 holds up rather well, and it gives this particular cast a lot of unexpected obstacles and baggage. It helps that them and Sonic are drawn really cool while using their powers, and especially in the artist's occasional silhouette style. It feels appropriate, ambitious even, like the start of something big. For these reasons, I'll give this issue a final rating of 8 out of 10. Very close to a 9 though. Man, the Chaotix almost came out unscathed. I can only hope that the next issue doesn't metaphorically kill off any other members of the cast. John Gray is really showing off his skills this time around. The main cover accentuates the threat level the heroes are up against in this zombie flick-inspired illustration. The shadows are befitting the mood, and I love Graham's colouring. Look at that little guy in the tagline. Skelly and Fordrain's variant covers do just as decent of a job at conveying the same feeling of dread and standing off against the zombot threat. The latter looks extremely adequate, and I can clearly see the It Came From Outer Space influences in the framing. Oh dang, this comic has a frontispiece now! Kind of. So, this comic has a story so far section before the comic begins, usually reusing panels from past issues, kind of like a previously on part of shows but for comics. Here, we see a map drawn up by Cream that shows where all the characters are at any given time, with a garish red cross over the locations and characters that have fallen in the line of battle. Creative stuff. Wait, Mr. Silver's Garden? Oh yeah, the one that he and Blaze created, as seen in the 2019 annual. Anyone want me to cover those at some point? Unlike the last one, issue number 18, Victims, focuses on both Sonic saving the remaining inhabitants of a village, and also Eggman and Starline while they observe the carnage from their face ship. They don't get equal attention, obviously, but it helps seeing all this from the villain's point of view, or specifically Starline's. It's this issue where he starts to see the flaws of the good doctor's ambitions, which I think started way back when his ear first heard the on-the-nose naming of their flying fortress. It turns out the Zombots aren't responding to Eggman's commands, but while the big bad brushes it off and wishes to control the situation later, Starline expresses much disdain at his idol's lazy methods. He confides with Orbot about how he practically worshipped Eggman and the ground he walked on, but now he doesn't know if Sonic's just really powerful or if the big egg is dumber than a box of potatoes and cannot adapt. Orbot responds with what generally goes on in a dismissive manner. Eggman has a big plan, Sonic comes in and blows it up in his face. Start back at square one. It gets Starline thinking. I'll explain my thoughts on the review section. Meanwhile, Cream and her family make their debut as the aimless Zombot horde reaches their home of Floral Forest Village. Even Jamel's here, in all of his robo-speak glory. Again, review section. Sonic's not having a good time as his infection spreads further with every blow he delivers, and he almost immediately gets into a scuffle with Jamel. The Robot Guardian sees Sonic as no less of a threat than the Zombots, and the two have a few pages of combat, and it takes Cream coming between him and the infected to stop his rampage and attacking unknowingly invulnerable civilians. Following Jamel fighting fairly and protecting Cream with nobody being harmed, not even the hostile victims of the outbreak, Cream hears a scream from her household. Cheese and Chocola protect Vanilla from the Zombots, sacrificing themselves and giving them time to escape. As if this day couldn't get any worse, but we've only just started, trust me. The issue ends with Sonic and Jamel covering the grieving rabbit's escape, avoiding Zombots and the already turned Chow, the two of which are trapped in glass jars to let the shuttle fly away unscathed. The Hedgehog soon gets a call from Rouge through an invisible earpiece that things are about to go tits up in Sunset City. The outbreak is going from bad to worse, and that leaves another city for Sonic to rescue. This issue was even more impactful than the last, in equal parts due to the story focusing on innocent lives, and those fighting back against an overwhelming threat, and also thanks to the art being just as stellar as before. Sonic once again is being pushed to his limit, which I like to see. Through such hardships, it really comes to show just how much he keeps his cool despite the odds. Cream, Cheese and Co. make for brilliant characters for this issue to focus on, as they are the most peaceful and ill-equipped for battle, at least against the Zombot threat. I love how Cream is drawn in this issue. The art and colours really emphasise her purity. Seeing her lose her Chow companions is pretty sad. It makes you want to give the poor girls a hug. The art was done by the same peeps as the previous issue, and all the characters are given both a decent amount of focus as the narrative gets more perilous. The panels look excellently dynamic when the moment calls for it, the super fast action is very well drawn, and I like these two NPCs on this one page. Sonic stopping this dude from causing a forest fire while asking the Hedgehog why they don't get priority over Cream was pretty funny. Starline gets some moments, and even Orbot looks well drawn and expressive in this issue. Ito's colouring, sorry I keep getting your name wrong, shows that the world of Sonic can look pretty eye-catching even during these crazy moments. The mix of greens and blues with the sun washing through the village in one panel really shows that the dude is mighty fine when given the appropriate locations to colour. The use of bendy dots on some panels are a nice touch, as are the backgrounds when they go full yellow or red. In terms of characterization, I love to see the good guys get through hardships, but good golly there are a couple of things that me and other fans have less than pleasing remarks about. Okay, time for the mild issues. Starline's starting to get really disheartened at the Eggman he thought he knew. He's starting to be less crafty and more dismissive on planning ahead, and the platypus's sentiment was quickly agreed to by fans. Since the inception of the metal virus, Eggman has indeed been pretty lax and just goes with the flow without, intricately testing his plans before they're put into motion. And this case of diminishing returns is echoed somewhat by Orbot's explanation of the status quo, a thing the writer Flynn has also expressed due to how his plans always go awry by his lack of thinking ahead. It ultimately doesn't bring down the villain's motives that much to me, because we've seen that he does indeed plan ahead. Sure, he didn't in regards to Perfect Chaos, but he had the Egg Carrier too just in case he turns traitor. He didn't plan to, disappear after the final boss of Sonic Forces, but he did have Metal Sonic powered up and stowed away somewhere. Hold on, I lost track of thought. I guess what I'm saying is, I agree with the comic and writer insisting that Eggman never plans ahead. It is indeed true to his character, as his fatal flaw is very much what he's like in most Sonic media. But also, personally, I feel that the villain is smarter than people make him out to be. He's very resourceful. Keep in mind that the two people having this discussion in-universe are a hyper Eggman fanboy and the Doctor's disgruntled henchman. Two guys who probably shouldn't be discussing morality when they work for the guy who's currently doing this to the planet. All in all, Eggman being an uninterested jerkass is somewhat unprecedented, so I'll have to dock a few points. The other thing worth noting is Jamel, Cream's protector robot. He makes his first appearance here, though eagle-eyed fans note that he appeared alongside Cream and Omega in this variant cover for issue 9 almost a year prior. Now, this guy is fairly familiar with Archie Sonic fans, as he was starting to be a recurring character in the tail end of the reboot. There, his personality is shockingly different to his IDW self, talking in quips and being generally snarky, which I totally understand. I missed the crap out of Shard too. In game canon, Jamil was reprogrammed by Tails at the end of Sonic Advance 3, and thought to be given the same personality and friendliness as Emerl from Sonic Battle, who indeed talks that way because he basically got it from hanging around with Sonic and becoming attached to him and his friends. That made sense, and funny thing, at the time of this video I was doing quick reactionary reviews of Archie Sonic on my blog, specifically issue 283, and going from flat RoboSpeak to hey what's up you guys made me feel so much whiplash I almost fainted on the spot. As a Sonic comic fan, going from that to his IDW portrayal is a little bit of a downgrade, especially when his personality seems extremely flat for a game canon character. He does get better over time, but his portrayal as a reformed Eggman bot who needs to be talked out of mechanical logic talk did get a little bit tiring. I appreciate that he's a protector of Cream though, that's certainly the best thing about his character if I'm being honest. Gripes with characterization aside, I enjoyed this issue a lot. It raises the stakes and heightens the tension, and it brings more of Sonic's friends into the ongoing saga. Is it depressing? Not as much as it will be later. But this issue handles its drama in a respectable fashion, even with all of the heart-wrenching moments involving Cream the Rabbit. For this, I'd say issue number 18 deserves a good rating of 7 out of 10. Now that just leaves the last two. I hope you guys are ready for more Shadow. I'm certainly not. The main cover for issue number 19 isn't one of my faves. No offense to Ryan Jampol or anything, I just believe this cover's colouring, the characters' sharp edges and cluttered backgrounds do little for the story being told here. I appreciate the depiction of Team Dark as heroes rescuing peeps and little critters though. The variants this time are the familiar 4-drain one, this one being very The Fog influenced, but the second one is by Lamar Wells, an Archie Sonic veteran, which I find fascinating in multiple ways. He wasn't on artist duty during the pre-reboot, but there sure are a lot of characters here who resemble those from the old continuity. I can't be the only one to notice this, right? I didn't see it on Sonic News Network. Like, look here, there's Prince Elias, Jeffrey St. John, Predator Hawk, Boomer Walrus, what I hope to God is Tommy Turtle and not some demon, Hamlin Pig, Larry Lynx, Jack Rabbit, they're all dead ringers for those of the long-gone continuity. You can't escape the ghosts of the past forever, Sonic. Issue number 19, Crisis City Part 1. Things are not looking great in Sunset City. What was once a settlement destroyed by Eggman's Sentinels is now once again under attack, this time by waves of Zombots. These dudes can never catch a break. Sonic's barreling his way into the crowded streets after answering Rouge's call, though there are very few unaffected civilians. Omega is here, but like Jamel in the previous issue, he's too caught up by logic to listen to Sonic's words of caution over harming victims of the metal virus. Good thing they're invulnerable, or else he'd be paying for a lot of medical bills by the time this is over. Sonic meets up with Rouge, who he catches up to speed on the situation. At least there's one person he can count on who isn't needlessly shooting targets or acting like a total arsehole. Speaking of which, Shadow is here to lecture our hero and tell him about how his righteous cause led to Eggman being back and mucking up the world. While I would agree that Sonic should have probably done more, and that Starline arriving was totally out of left field, I'd cut the dude some slack, as he's dealing with the consequences of his actions enough already. Shadow has Omega to lend the refugees a hand and keep back the Zombots, while he, being the ultimate rival stereotype that he is facing off against the oncoming horde because heroes don't run, they win. But lo and behold, ego doesn't save you from the infection, genius. The issue ends with Rouge witnessing Shadow become overwhelmed by the Zombots as his infection spreads ever further, and Omega's firepower can barely hold them back from the rescued civilians within the truck. Sonic gets called over to handle Shadow, and the blue boy quickly gets pinned by who else than now zombotified Shadow, who's more spikier than before with even less qualms about killing our hero. Can't say we didn't warn him, right? In terms of story, I'd say that this issue was a little less impressive than before. Don't get me wrong, I love the dramatic escalation of zombots interrupting civilians in their daily life to a city so torn by the metal virus outbreak that there's nary a survivor to be seen, except in sparingly few panels. It's just that there was a whole lot of action and not much heart, which the other issues delivered in spades. My boy Sonic's personality and inner monologue are becoming more and more tragic as more lives are lost to the zombots, to the point where he's actually starting to feel fatigued. That's a neat detail to add to the number of things the hero has to weigh on his conscience. I can't exactly give the same credit when it comes to Team Dark, however, some more than others. Rouge and Omega are fine, the latter's humorously destructive personality is gone, though jokes involving his unabashed tenacity are shown in other ways, such as this one page where civilians wish to thank him personally, and they smash cut to a panel of him whacking a zombot with another zombot. He's more straight with his destruction over anything else Eggman built, which actually gets on Sonic's nerves, so at least I'm not alone in that. Rouge and the others may not be gun agents, but she still acts as the leader of their unofficial squad, though she's clearly less of a hero in IDW Sonic and more like a gem thief who just happens to be a good guy sometimes. Her camaraderie with the other members of the group is sorely missed, but I've already complained about that in a previous video, so I won't dwell on it here. Her co-worker, Shadow the Hedgehog, I equally won't take the time to bitch about. It's not worth the argument. Him ploughing through the city in the gun truck from Sonic Adventure 2 was a nice, if curious, callback, considering that the military organisation doesn't exist in IDW Sonic. Where did he get that? Did he steal it? Shadow, did you not watch the advert? But otherwise, I didn't care much for his inclusion here except for being a plot device for the heroes to fight later. Fun fact, his selfless sacrifice was meant to be entirely different in the writer's original pitch. Shadow's not always a cocky rival, and Flynn originally intended him to do the old remove inhibitor rings to let out his powers trick, even turning all red-hued like how Shadow did when he was ready to use the Chaos Blast in his game. It would have been to literally burn away the metal virus from its hosts, but Sega vetoed the whole idea, instead preferring that he go out like a total simpleton and think that he's so above it all that he could be unharmed by any mere corrosive liquid. This was done so as to escalate the danger levels of the zombots in this narrative, but personally I feel it could have still achieved that if he went out like a hero. We'd still understand the dangers the metal virus poses. I guess he was just too grumpy to listen to common sense. His personality is still cocky as hell, and I can't even bear to see it, so let's just move on to something else. The art of this issue, done by Lawrence, is extremely impressive, all things considered. The dude must have had major wrist pain after drawing entire pages of zombots cluttered everywhere. They might have a case of same-face-itis, but that's still a lot of full-bodied NPCs being drawn. It's a testament to his skill, I'm most certain. His art does dip slightly whenever characters turn sharply in any direction, giving them somewhat off proportions. It was a thing I noticed in the last issue he drew as well. But it could just be me. It works well on the zombots because, they're meant to be creepy as all heck, but not so much on hedgehogs. Otherwise, I have nothing against the art and the way they are composed. The action panels are just too cool for me to hate. The colouring this time around was done by newcomer Bricardi Curry, who I'm a little less optimistic about. Don't get me wrong, he does a decent job, and I love how the zombots appear thanks to his contributions, becoming an amalgamation of sleek metal zombies the longer the issue goes on. But I'm not much of a fan of his flat colour backgrounds, nor when the action heats up and makes the line art all hazy and washed out. I'd rather that be used sparingly than frequently, because it makes the overuse in dusty orange nearly unbearable for me. The whole visuals were a mixed bag. But I guess that's my thoughts on this issue as a whole. The ramped up violence and mental strain Sonic experiences are fascinating to read, but otherwise there was a lot of tiring action with characters I don't much like. Therefore, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's not that bad, just a little disappointing. Hey, at least we get to see Shadow get beaten up next issue. Ooh, shiny. Sonic's Rivals certainly looks menacing on this cover, courtesy of Yardley. His almost feral appearance and the gritty blood splatter effect on the edges really make this out to be a thrilling battle, which it kind of is. I feel bad for fans who had ready access to future covers at the time, as this probably spoiled the cliffhanger for them. Lawrence and Four Drains variants are alright. Yeah, just alright. The colouring is not bad, and I enjoy the intense Sonic and Zombot Shadow brawl on the last one. Why can't he be this cool in the comic proper? Oh my, look at the roll call page. They've updated Shadow's picture to his post-infected self. That's awesome. forever. Issue number 20, Crisis City Part 2, has Sonic break free from Zombot Shadow's grasp, noting that he's thankfully not as powerful in his current state, nor does he know how to use his skatey boots. With Omega coming in to spar with the Zombot horde alongside Sonic, the Hedgehog realises that while the survivors have gotten free, Shadow is still about, and Omega's not going to listen to his warnings of goodness. Instead, he's going to underestimate Shadow and let the situation get more out of control. God, good thing he's a robot, or else this would be gory as frick. With Omega drowning in the crowds as he slowly gets torn apart, Sonic appears to be on the brink of defeat, what with there being no room for him to run off the metal virus, but thankfully, help soon arrives in the form of the Restoration. Silver's telekinesis literally saves Sonic's skin, and even Omega is rescued, or at least his still activated head is. Shortly after, at Restoration HQ, Cream leads Sonic through and reintroduces him to Jamel, who is initially skeptical, Rouge, who does her best to hide her pain after hearing her partner got taken, and Amy Rose, who is currently busy contacting squads while they each begin to grow silent. It's a tough day for the heroes, and none of them are taking it as badly as Sonic himself, who can barely get a few seconds to nap lest he be fully infected. At least Silver and Tails are around for the guys to discuss the first step in combating this epidemic. The issue comes to a close when Tails explains that they are going to put a device on Sonic to measure his speed, since his innate ability is the only thing pushing back the spreading. And with that data, Tails is going to conjure up a cure to give to Amy and the Restoration. Looks to be a jolly good plan, but we are only at the start of this saga. Over on the Face ship, Starline is at a loss of what to do, since his boss has no problems with the virus being beyond their control. That is, until he spies on the Eggnet the Doctor's old Lost Hex plans, detailing Zeti, who he can command, and whom of which possess electromagnetic powers to control robots with. A deadly skill which the platypus scientist feels could be put to good use concerning their uncontrollable robot situation. Good luck with that, buddy. Well, at least this time we didn't spend the entire issue with Shadow and the gang in a dusty, decrepit cityscape. Half of it was with the Restoration in their equally as drab headquarters. I'm sorry, I'll talk about the art first if y'all don't mind. The action was fairly well drawn in the beginning, and I love the use of colours and Dutch angle tilts with the Sonic and Shadow scuffle. It stood out the most in terms of how awesome it looked, and I commend Lawrence for it. The crowd of sickly green zombots were allowed to show more of their threat level, especially when they overcome Sonic and Omega at the end and paint the backdrop in eerie red silhouettes. The way the crimson matches their eyes is put to good use here. For the story, I'm glad Omega got knocked down a peg, or rather a few pegs, because when he's not simply being a killbot with no moral code and nothing else, he comes off as one bland robot. I think making him a head that just spouts aimless threats is an improvement, though I did like how he said a line that he had uttered in Archie Sonic. That was a nice nod. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but I love how Sonic is portrayed as he gets more and more let down by the situation. It might be a bit tiring just seeing all the main characters get infected and stuff, and then Sonic's just running around like progressively getting more and more tired. But I don't know, I'm interested in that. He has to work around his metallic infection without ever touching anyone, even when his friends are in need of comfort. There's also a neat visual which I only noticed now, and who knows, he probably does that a lot earlier as well, where he has to do more hand gestures and pointing to get his point across, which is a realistic outcome when you can't interact with people physically anymore. I enjoyed that little moment of Sonic and Amy where they were in the middle of their hectic operations. They had the time to talk and catch up, but only for a little bit before the serious stuff came back. I also didn't know how to segue to this, but look at that! No, not on the panel itself. Enhance! It's the cute sheep girl from issue number 2, now officially named Lanolin. I'm glad she's a returning background character now with the Resistance, and she even made a prior appearance in issue number 13, which I totally didn't forget to mention. Perhaps it's due to its slightly more hopeful tone, having more characters for our weary hero to bounce off of, the better balance of intense action and relaxed, if moody, break among the chaos, or because there was more colour and charm occupying its many pages. I can't exactly put my finger on it, but there's something here that fulfilled me as a reader which the previous issue could not. Am I crazy in almost believing that some of this issue's character reflection and appealingness could have been placed in issue number 19 just to balance it out? So I guess I'll rank this issue a 7 out of 10, closer to a 6 than an 8, obviously. In the next issue, I will be looking at the next part of this saga, known as The Last Minute. Its stories cover a bunch of different characters, all in the same time frame, so at least we'll be seeing from the point of view of the other main peeps, if the focus on Sonic and his tiredness was getting too tiring for anyone. Anyway, stay safe you guys. Thank you ever so much for watching, if indeed you still are, and I'll see you in the next video.